Hello and welcome to this Resurrection Easter Hymn of the Week episode. We're delighted to be together with you. Thank you for inviting us into your homes to share these few minutes together. It's a delight each week to spend this time. Well, we just had Easter Sunday. Today is Tuesday as we record, and we're living in the bask of the glow of Jesus' resurrection. What a glow to participate in, to be caught up in. And as we think about the Easter week and look back, it's quite a journey we've been on, from Palm Sunday through the Maundy Thursday, where Jesus washed his disciples' feet and demonstrated his love and servant heart towards them, and then into the Garden of Gethsemane, and where Jesus prayed and was in agony, where Judas then came to betray him, and the disciples all fleeing from him as Jesus went to his trial. Peter's great denial happened that night, and then the despair of Saturday, not knowing what would ever happen, thinking that it was all over the disciples at that point. And then came Sunday, Easter Sunday. It was just a normal day for them when it began. But it didn't end that way. Jesus had risen from the dead. These stories warm us and stir us every time we hear them. We've been living in the Easter glow for nearly 2,000 years, maybe over 2,000 years by the time we count it up now. And we need to be reminded of the wonder and the amazement of what happened on that day that changed everything. So today I'm going to read to you from John chapter 20, where Pastor Harry will be speaking a little bit from as we lean into our hymn of the week this week. So, chapter 20, verses 1 to 18. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, "They've taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they've put him." So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, also went inside. He saw and believed. They still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to where they were staying. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They've taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you're looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord," and she told them that he had said these things to her.
Our hymn of the week, "Christ the Lord is Risen Today," by Charles Wesley. Our passage of the week from the Gospel of John highlights the experiences of Mary Magdalene in the resurrection narrative. Her name appears frequently in the Gospels, but often with an additional note attached: a woman who was delivered of 7 demons. She was a woman who had been forgiven much and loved much. Perhaps this explains her devotion and love for Jesus throughout the Passion story. She lingered after his death to see where they laid his body. She went to the tomb early Sunday morning while it was still dark and discovered that the stone had been removed from the entrance. She reported it to Peter and John and remained at the tomb weeping after they had all left again. She looked into the tomb and saw the two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been. She mistook Jesus for the gardener and recognized him by the way he spoke her name, Mary. She was the first to see our risen Lord, and the first to declare the good news, I have seen the Lord. Our hymn of the week, Christ the Lord is risen today, seeks to capture the joyous and triumphant spirit of her announcement. The hymn was written in 1739 by England's most prolific hymn writer, Charles Wesley. He was born December 18th, 1707, the 18th of 19 children born to Samuel and Susanna Wesley. Samuel was an Anglican clergyman and did everything possible to ensure that his sons would receive a thorough education. Their mother, Susanna, was also educated and held her children to a rigorous homeschooling schedule of 6 hours per day. Both Charles and his older brother John, the 15th child, attended the Westminster School in London, where their oldest sibling, Samuel, was the headmaster. Both brothers went on to graduate from Oxford University. In 1735, following graduation from Oxford, the two brothers, Charles and John, sailed to America as missionaries to Indians in the Georgian colony. However, 2 years later, they returned to England, disillusioned by their experience. As John wrote, I went to America to convert Indians, but oh, who will convert me? On their return voyage, they encountered a group of Moravian Christians on their ship. They were impressed by their devotion to Jesus and by a sense of certainty of their salvation. It was on Pentecost Sunday, May 20th, 1738, while attending a Moravian service, that Charles recorded in his journal, at midnight, I gave myself to Christ, assured that I was safe, whether sleeping or waking. A short while later, John described what he described his evangelical conversion with these descriptive words, my heart was strangely warmed. Charles and Wesley became leaders of the evangelical awakening in England. They were both preachers, but with somewhat different giftings. John was a preacher and the organizer of the Methodist movement. Charles was also a preacher, but a hymn writer as well. He wrote over 6,500 hymns in his lifetime. Among the best known, our hymn of the week, Christ the Lord is risen today. He wrote the hymn in 1739, a year after what he often referred to as his Aldersgate encounter with our risen Lord. The original hymn consisted of 11 verses, written without the Alleluias, but they were added later to give strength and energy to this hymn of praise. The melody was taken from a hymn book published in 1708 entitled Lyrica Davidia, the Lyre of David. The composer remains anonymous. Listen to the music as played by Ruth Thiessen at the piano and Steve Klassen on the trumpet, and follow the words on your screens. Christ the Lord is risen today, by Charles Wesley, our hymn of the week.